Hello and welcome to The Insider, a show designed to clue you into the biggest news, events and announcements inside the video games industry, discussing with you some things you may know, some things you may not, and glue holds it all together is a little bit of my own opinion. My name is Paul James, thank you very much for watching, and let's get with the episode. So Xbox had a fairly sizable week last week. Now that we're a week removed from X019, we're going to break down many of the announcements that were revealed at that conference, discuss a lot of the news and a lot of the really important facets that were raised during the X0 2019 conference. We're going to break it all down, talk about what it means for this gen and next. So let's get into it. So we'll begin by talking about the first party titles that were announced at X019, because there was actually a few of them. We'll begin with two brand new IP in the form of Obsidian's Grounded, which is the latest game from Obsidian, the team who just put out the Outer Worlds multi-platform. They got bought by Microsoft a little while ago. This is one of those games that was developing and in development before the acquisition, so they are seeing it through. And then Rare announced a new game called Everwild. And both games are kind of leaning more into a very artistic style, and I don't mean artistic in terms of, because all video games are art, but they're not diving into realism in terms of their visual style. They are going for kind of exaggerated, cartoony, more animated style appearances, and that's fine. There's the biggest game in the world is Fortnite, and that channels that very, very well. But what both games kind of represent in a lot of ways, and in both cases, like what we saw with Ninja Theory's Bleeding Edge when it was revealed at E3, is that these are kind of side projects, and they're kind of getting out in front with their messaging and saying, look, no, we're working on a core Obsidian game, we're working on a core Ninja Theory game, we're working on a core Rare game, but this is something else we're working on as well, so please don't hate us, because it's not what you expected. And I don't like that messaging, only in that it suggests that they themselves aren't necessarily confident in their own product. If you think about what we see from PlayStation, when Naughty Dog develops a new IP, they've been doing Uncharted, they've done Uncharted 1, 2, 3, they were all the biggest games of the year for that platform, and then they announced The Last of Us. They weren't doubling down going, no, but you'll get more Uncharted. They announced a new IP, they stuck to their guns, and it was the biggest and best game of that console generation. And we're not seeing the same sort of thing going on here. And what I'd really like to see is for Xbox and its developers to be more confident in the games they're making. Yes, I know, like the Xbox first party titles over the course of this generation haven't been nearly as good as what we've expected from PlayStation. But what you need to put out there is confidence. And sure, maybe they are kind of the secondary teams working on it, but they deserve just as much limelight and as much spotlight as any of your other games like Halo or Gears. Now, while we're on that matter, these games are undated, and many can assume that they are coming to the Xbox Scarlet alongside what we're going to get from Halo Infinite. And that bodes really well in that what the new console is getting straight out the gate is first-party support, which is something we didn't really get a lot of from PlayStation last generation. They proved to be really successful, but it was the one big criticism against the PS4 at launch, and Microsoft isn't going to fall into that trap. On top of all that, you've got Age of Empires 4, which was kind of blown open finally, and a whole host more, which we're going to begin to talk about next. Next up, there were some release dates. So Bleeding Edge, I mentioned it before, it now has a March 2020 release date. Wasteland 3, coming from In Exile, another one of those games that was kind of in development, like Bleeding Edge and like Obsidian's Grounded. This was another game that was in development before they were acquired by Xbox. But Wasteland 3 is coming in May 2020. Minecraft Dungeons has a specific April 2020 release date. We've got Ori that's coming February 11th, which we already knew about, and Tell Me Why, which was a new Don't Nod game that was announced, and that's going to be coming in as Southern Hemisphere's winter of next year. What we are seeing is a really good closing of the Xbox One arc. What it really suggests is that Xbox, despite the fact that they are getting trounced in terms of sales numbers, are not willing to give up on this console. They're going to support it to the end, and they're hoping, and I think, for good reason, that the momentum they build in the back end of the Xbox One's generation is going to lead into the next generation and set them up, and people are going to really be bought into what they're doing, and there's a lot of really good things going on there. Xbox is supporting that console really well in 2020. Now, they do have some competition, just some small titles in the form of Ghost of Tsushima and The Last of Us Part 2 coming on the PlayStation side of the equation. But they're giving themselves every opportunity to have a really successful final year, and I'm really excited to see how these games play out, especially Ori. Look out for that in the Game of the Year 2020. So we'll ignore the games for a little bit and we'll talk about the services. Now, I've spoken regularly on the Insider and Patched and basically any platform that I get a hold of that what Xbox is doing with Game Pass is leagues ahead of what PlayStation and other platforms are doing. And they doubled down on it even further at X019. So we got some new services announced, like there's if you subscribe to Game Pass and Xbox Gold, the Ultimate, you're going to get a few months of Discord Nitro, which is cool for those who love Discord. I've kind of grown on it in the last year or so. It's a great platform, so that's really good for anyone who wants some free Discord Nitro. And there's a whole bunch of little partnerships along the way. But the one that really struck out for a lot of people is xCloud. Now, I've not spoken about xCloud all that much because being in Australia, the streaming future is a little bit further away from us than it is for a lot of other regions around the world. But xCloud is a really great premise. It's streaming tech. Xbox is supporting it really well. It looks like it's going to be successful, unlike Stadia. Dunk. And what they're doing is if you're a Game Pass Ultimate subscriber, so you've got your Xbox Live, you've got your Game Pass, you're also going to get xCloud. So you get free streaming. That's a fantastic initiative, and really Microsoft is one of the few companies in the world that could afford to be giving us as much as they are and presumably have it not hit their bottom line too significantly. They're really making some bold moves that are going to pay off, hopefully, next generation. So let's see if they pay off. And then there's the games, and we'll talk about that next.
ISIS, a hero is someone who keeps coming back.
So on top of the first parties, on top of the games that were announced for Game Pass, the likes of The Witcher 3 for example, there are also a bunch of indies that were revealed. Two really caught my attention, West of Dead and Drake Hollow. You're going to have to go look those up. I might drop some trailers in here for you, but there's some really cool indie projects that are coming to the platform as well, amongst several others that were shown at X019. And some others that are kind of returning faces. We've got some great Australian games that are there that we saw at E3 and they've featured again. Xbox is really doubling down on their support for those. It's fantastic. Keep supporting that Aussie indie scene. We love it. You're putting out some great games. But the indie scene was really well supported via X019, both in the conference and in everything they did afterwards. Xbox did not miss a beat through this conference, and it was fantastic. They're in a great spot to attack the next generation, and through the indies, through the first parties, through these services, through everything else that we've outlined so far, they are really putting a lot of heat on PlayStation to get even somewhere remotely near that when the PS5 finally gets detailed. The ball's back in PlayStation's court. They do have the opportunity to try and match this in some way, shape or form, but will they? That's the big question. And so that concludes this week's episode of The Insider. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider liking, sharing and subscribing. All those buttons are down the bottom, and hit that notification bell. That way you're alerted to every new video the moment it goes live on the channel. That includes Patched, The Insider, Player 2 Plays, Late Game Review, Gamer School, and a whole lot more. There's some awesome stuff there, so please be sure to go and check it out. Visit the website, player2.net.au, where you'll find reviews, previews, opinion pieces, news, features, links to our podcast series, Patched, the Player 2 Pixelcast, and my baby dev diary. There's lots of awesome stuff for you to listen to there on your travels to work, so please subscribe to those and check out all the written stuff on the website. It's fantastic. We're also on Patreon, patreon.com/player2au, and consider kicking a few bucks. At the lower tiers, you'll get early access to episodes, whilst at the higher tiers, you'll get monthly episode exclusives. Finally, there's Twitter. You'll find me at Paul James Games, the website you'll find at player2au. And until next time, that is X019 wrapped up with some bigger picture ideas discussed as well. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.